By this point, you have moved from research questions to human experience, to experiential layers, to interview sub-questions, and then into participant-facing interview questions. Now you need to check one more thing. Do those interview questions fit the qualitative approach you are using? The answer matters because qualitative interviews are not all the same. A phenomenological study, a narrative study, a grounded theory study, a case study, and a basic qualitative study may all use interviews, but they do not listen for exactly the same kind of data. Your qualitative approach gives you a listening priority. It tells you what kind of understanding the interview needs to make possible. That listening priority should shape how you word your questions, what kind of detail you invite, and what you follow closely. A common novice mistake is treating open-ended as enough. A question may begin with "tell me about" or "describe," but still not fit the study. Strong interview questions are not only open-ended, they are answerable, aligned, and approach-aware. Use a simple routine. First, name your qualitative approach. Second, name what that approach listens for. Third, check whether your interview questions invite that kind of data. If they do not, revise the wording. This routine keeps the video focused on design, not labels. You are not trying to memorize every qualitative tradition. You are asking, what does my approach need my interview questions to help me here? Let's start with phenomenology. Phenomenology listens for lived experience and meaning. It asks what an experience is like for the people who have lived it. If your study is phenomenological, your interview questions should invite participants into moments, perceptions, feelings, embodied experience, and meaning. You are not only asking what happened, you are asking what it was like. For example, if your study asks how learners with dyslexia experience independence when using AI tools during academic tasks, a phenomenological interview question might be, can you describe what it is like when you try to begin an assignment using an AI tool? That question fits a phenomenological approach because it invites lived meaning. It does not only ask whether the learner started the assignment, it asks what that moment was like for the learner. A weaker phenomenological question would be, do AI tools increase independence? That question points toward measurement. It does not invite the participant to describe the lived meaning of independence. Phenomenological questions often sound like, what was that experience like? How did that feel in the moment? What did you notice? What did that mean to you? The goal is not to make every question emotional. The goal is to stay close to lived experience and meaning. Now consider narrative inquiry. Narrative inquiry listens for story, sequence, turning points, and how people connect events over time. If your study is narrative, your interview questions should invite participants to tell how something unfolded. You are listening for beginnings, transitions, complications, changes, and the way participants organize experience into a story. A narrative interview question might be, can you tell me the story of how you first began using AI tools for schoolwork? This invites sequence. It allows the participant to begin somewhere, move through events, and explain what changed. Another narrative question might be, tell me about moments when your relationship with AI support changed or stayed the same. This invites the participant to locate shifts, continuities, or turning points in the story. A weaker narrative question would be, what are your opinions about AI tools? That may produce commentary, but it does not invite the participant to narrate experience over time. Narrative questions often sound like, tell me the story of, walk me through how that developed. Where would you say this began? What changed after that? Was there a turning point? The key is sequence. Now consider grounded theory. Grounded theory listens for process. It asks how something happens, how people move through conditions, and what actions, strategies, or consequences are involved. If your study is grounded theory, your interview questions should invite participants to describe processes, decisions, conditions, actions, consequences, and changes. You are listening for movement. A grounded theory interview question might be, walk me through a time when you decided whether to use AI for an assignment. What was happening that led to that decision? This invites action, context, and decision-making. Another grounded theory question might be, walk me through what you usually do from the moment an assignment feels difficult to the moment you decide what kind of support to use. This invites process. A weaker grounded theory question would be, do you like using AI? That question may produce an opinion, but it does not show the process of deciding, using, adapting, or responding. Grounded theory questions often sound like, what happens next? What do you usually do when? What influences your decision? What conditions make that easier or harder? How does that process unfold? The key is process. Now consider case study. Case study listens for how a phenomenon operates inside a bounded case. The case might be a classroom, a school, a program, a group, an organization, or another specific setting. If your study is a case study, interviews are one source of evidence about the case. Your questions should gather participant experience, but they should also help you understand how the case works. A case study interview question might be, how do the rules or expectations in your school shape the way students use AI for assignments? This connects participant experience to the bounded setting. Another case study question might be, can you describe how support for AI use works in your classroom or program? This helps you understand structures, roles, routines, and conditions inside the case. A weaker case study question would be, what do you think about AI? That may produce a broad opinion, but it does not help you understand how the phenomenon operates inside the specific case. Case study questions often sound like, in this program, at this school, in your classroom, how does this setting shape? What structures or expectations influence? Who is involved when? The key is bounded context. Now consider a basic qualitative study. A basic qualitative study often listens for how participants understand, interpret, and make meaning of a phenomenon in their lives or work. If your study is basic qualitative, your interview questions should invite description, examples, interpretation, and meaning-making. You are trying to understand how participants make sense of something, without necessarily building the interview around story, process, essence, or a bounded case. A basic qualitative interview question might be, can you describe how AI tools fit into the way you approach academic work? This invites experience and meaning without requiring a specific narrative sequence, process model, or case structure. Another basic qualitative question might be, what does using AI support mean for how you see yourself as a learner? This invites interpretation while leaving room for complexity. A weaker basic qualitative question would be, is AI good or bad for students? That question pushes participants toward evaluation instead of grounded meaning. Basic qualitative questions often sound like, how do you understand? Can you describe? What does this mean for you? How do you make sense of? What role does this play in? The key is participant meaning-making. Now use the routine again. First, name the approach. Second, name what it listens for. Third, check whether the question invites that kind of data. The same broad topic can lead to different interview questions depending on the answer. Let's compare the approaches side by side using the same broad topic. Learners with dyslexia using AI tools during academic work. A phenomenological question might ask, what is it like to use AI when an assignment feels difficult to begin? This invites lived experience. A narrative question might ask, can you tell me the story of how your use of AI for schoolwork has changed over time? This invites sequence and development. A grounded theory question might ask, walk me through the process you use when deciding whether to use AI for an academic task. This invites action, decision-making, and process. A case study question might ask, How do the rules or expectations in your school shape the way you use AI for assignments? This invites context inside a bounded setting. A basic qualitative question might ask, how do you make sense of the role AI plays in your academic independence? This invites participant meaning-making. Notice that all of these questions are qualitative. They are all open, but they are not interchangeable. Each one listens for a different kind of data. This is why approach matters. Your qualitative approach tells you what kind of answer would actually help the study. A beautiful question can still be misaligned if it invites the wrong kind of data for your design. This does not mean every question in your interview must sound identical. You may still ask warm-up questions, context questions, example questions, and reflective questions. But the center of the interview should match the qualitative approach. It also does not mean that approaches cannot overlap. A phenomenological study may ask about sequence if sequence helps the participant describe the experience. A grounded theory study may ask about feelings if feelings are part of the process. The problem is not including more than one kind of question. The problem is losing the dominant listening priority. Your approach should shape the overall pattern of the interview. A common mistake is letting the topic control the interview instead of the approach. If the topic is AI, every question becomes about AI. If the topic is support, every question becomes about support. But approach asks a deeper question. What kind of understanding am I trying to build about this topic? For example, AI use is not enough. Are you studying the lived experience of AI-supported independence? The story of learning to use AI? The process of deciding when to use AI? The way AI use works inside one school? The meaning learners attach to AI support? Each of those requires different interview questions. The topic may stay the same, but the approach changes what you need to ask. Now try the practice move with your own study. Write your qualitative approach at the top of the page. Then write what that approach needs most: lived meaning, story, process, bounded context, or sense-making. Next, choose one interview subquestion. Ask whether the participant-facing questions you wrote match your approach. If your approach is phenomenological, do the questions invite lived experience? If it is narrative, do they invite sequence? If it is grounded theory, do they invite process? If it is case study, do they help you understand the bounded setting? If it is basic qualitative, do they invite participants to describe and interpret meaning? Revise one question so it better matches your approach. Your qualitative approach does not give you a script. It gives you a listening priority. It tells you what kind of data matters most for your study. When your interview questions fit your approach, the interview becomes more than open-ended conversation. It becomes a methodologically aligned way of listening. A strong interview question is answerable by the participant, connected to a sub-question, and shaped by the qualitative approach. That is what keeps your interview human, focused, and aligned.